On Zombie Reddit, today's story is
My cousin is obsessed with my husband, and my manipulative aunt destroyed my marriage and gave him to her. My name is Sarah. I'm 28 and I've been married to Adam, 30, for 3 years. Like any couple, we've had our good times and our bad times, but I always thought we had a solid relationship. That's why what I'm about to tell you was like a bucket of cold water. And now I wonder if I was somehow to blame for this whole disaster. In my family there is my Aunt Natalie, a woman who has always been characterized as peculiar, to put it one way. Throughout my life, she has been the kind of person who does you a favor and then reminds you of it for the rest of your life. When I was little, I remember that her presence was always overwhelming, constantly talking about everything she had done for others and how people owed her. It's her way of maintaining control over others. Everyone in the family knows that she is manipulative, but I never imagined that I would find myself caught up in her games, especially not in this way. When I was younger, about 10 years ago, I went through a very difficult time financially. At the time I didn't have the support of my parents and I had just moved out on my own. I was getting by as best I could with part-time jobs, just about managing to survive. During that difficult period, Natalie reached out to me in a way that I deeply appreciated at the time. She lent me money. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to keep me afloat for a couple of months while I got myself back on my feet. I expressed my gratitude to her countless times and, after a while, I paid her back every last cent. I thought that was the end of it, and for years it seemed that way. She never brought up the subject again or hinted that I owed her anything. Naturally, I assumed it was water under the bridge. Now, let's talk about Grace, Natalie's daughter. Grace and I have never had a close relationship despite being cousins. She is a little younger than me, but we have always moved in very different circles. To be honest, we have never got on particularly well. Grace has always been the kind of person who is used to getting everything she wants, mainly because Natalie has always put her above everything and everyone else. At every family gathering, Grace must be the center of attention. During the holidays, Grace receives the best gifts, the highest praise, everything in excess. Over time, I learned not to make a big deal out of it, because that's how Natalie operates. She adores her daughter as if she were a fairy tale princess, and expects the rest of the family to feel lucky just to be in her presence. Grace's birthday was approaching. She was going to turn 26, and Natalie had been dropping hints for weeks about how this celebration needed to be extraordinary, and how she wanted to give her daughter the whole world. At first I didn't pay much attention. To be honest, Grace's birthday wasn't something I was losing sleep over. I was polite when Natalie mentioned it, responding with phrases like "oh, how nice" and things like that, but I really wasn't paying much attention to the matter. Then, without warning, Natalie called me one night saying she needed to discuss something important with me. I thought she wanted to talk about the birthday preparations or some other family gathering, so I agreed to meet her. During our meeting, Natalie made the most outrageous and inappropriate request I have ever heard. She told me, without any beating around the bush, that the only thing Grace wanted as a birthday present was for me to separate from Adam, my husband. I was completely paralyzed. What? Why? How could she even consider something like that? Natalie proceeded to explain that Grace had been in love with Adam for years, something I was completely unaware of, and that she was convinced he was her soulmate. According to Natalie, Grace had been pining for him since the first day she met him. And now that she was approaching 26, she felt it was her last chance to be with him. She genuinely believed that Adam should be by her side and that I was an obstacle to her happiness. Initially, I thought it must be a bad joke. There was no way that Natalie could seriously expect me to abandon my husband as a birthday present for her daughter. But as she continued talking, I realized that she was completely serious. She even started to mention the money she had lent me years ago, saying that I owed her and that this was the perfect way to repay her. According to her twisted logic, if I were truly grateful for her help when I needed it most, I would make this small sacrifice for her daughter. The shock I felt was indescribable. I could hardly process what I was hearing. Of course, I refused outright. I wasn't going to end my marriage because of the absurd whim of my spoiled cousin. I told Natalie that her request was completely unreasonable, that I would never leave Adam and that I didn't owe her anything. I had paid her back her money years ago, and whatever favors she thought she had done me didn't give her the right to demand such a thing. Her reaction was terrible. Natalie flew into a rage, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. She kept repeating that Grace deserved to be happy, that she had made countless sacrifices for me over the years, and that I was ruining everything by refusing to be reasonable. I left that conversation emotionally exhausted, but sure that I had done the right thing. I wasn't going to allow him to manipulate me like that. I tried not to think about it anymore, but a few days later, I noticed changes in my relationship with Adam. He became distant and cold, something unusual for him. When I tried to talk to him about what was going on, he simply ignored me. At first I thought it was work-related stress or something similar, until one day he sat down with me and told me he was leaving me. He didn't give many explanations, he just mentioned that things weren't going well and that he thought it was time for us to separate. I was devastated. It had all happened without any warning. I couldn't understand what had changed so suddenly. It wasn't until a mutual friend contacted me that I discovered the truth behind it all. It turns out that Natalie, after our conversation, went to talk to Adam behind my back, but of course she distorted the whole story to make me look like the villain. She told him that I had been ungrateful for everything she had done for me, that I didn't care about the family, and that I had been keeping secrets from her. She even made up stories about how distant and cold I had supposedly been with Adam, manipulating the situation to make it seem like I was the problem in our marriage. From what I've been told, she managed to convince him that I wasn't being honest with him, which was enough to push him over the edge. And that's where I am now, trying to pick up the pieces of my life after my husband left me because of my aunt's manipulations. Part of me wonders if there were already problems in our marriage and this was just the last straw. Maybe I didn't see some signs, or maybe I wasn't as good a wife as I thought, but another part of me is furious. How could Natalie do this to me? How could she go behind my back and destroy my marriage just because I refused to fulfill her whims? And why did Adam believe her so easily? Shouldn't he have trusted me enough to at least talk to me before making such an important decision? Right now I feel completely lost and hurt, not knowing which direction to take. My family is divided on the matter. Some think I should have given in and others agree that Natalie crossed all the boundaries. But honestly, I think this is no longer just about Natalie. I feel like there is something deeper, as if Adam had been looking for an excuse to leave and this just gave him the perfect opportunity. I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating, but I can't help feeling that somehow this is all my fault. Maybe if I had handled the situation with Natalie differently, or if I had been more attentive to Adam's needs, none of this would have happened. But at the same time, I feel like they put me between a rock and a hard place, and that no matter what I did, the result would have been the same. So, am I the bad guy for having refused my aunt's absurd request to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter? And am I responsible for my husband leaving me because of the lies she told him? I really need some perspective on this right now. Everything seems to be spiraling out of control and I don't know where to turn. Update 1. It's been several weeks since my life took a complete turn and I'm still trying to find my way. The situation with my Aunt Natalie and my husband Adam has been incredibly difficult to process. I didn't think I'd ever write about it again, but here I am, trying to make sense of everything that happened. Initially, I thought it was all a result of Natalie's interference, but as time goes by, I wonder if there was something else in my relationship with Adam that I couldn't see. I keep analyzing the situation and I keep coming back to the same question: was our marriage already deteriorating and I just didn't realize it? When Adam told me his decision to leave, it was extremely brief. He just said that things weren't working and it was time for us to separate. There were no discussions or confrontations, it just ended. I was devastated and confused. I thought we had a stable marriage, or at least as stable as any other with its ups and downs. It all seemed to happen out of the blue. After spending a few days processing my emotions and thoughts, I decided to contact Adam. I didn't want to give up without at least trying to talk about what had happened. I sent him a message asking if we could meet to talk. The next few days were torture, waiting for some kind of response. Finally, he replied, but his message was devastating. He told me he wasn't interested in talking and that his decision was final. But the worst was yet to come. He informed me that he was already dating someone else. And this was just a month after he had left me. When I found out that he had moved on so quickly, my world completely fell apart. I couldn't help but wonder if he had already been seeing this person before our breakup. Had I been so blind that I didn't notice him pulling away? I didn't dare ask him any of this because, honestly, I feared the answers. It was as if everything we had built together had vanished in an instant. It is difficult to describe the mixture of emotions that I have been experiencing. The anger, the betrayal, the confusion, everything is mixed up inside me. I constantly ask myself how he could move on so quickly, how he could be so willing to abandon everything we built together. I keep wondering if this new relationship began before our separation or if there were problems in our marriage that I simply ignored. I have been going over every conversation from the last few months looking for warning signs that I might have overlooked. However, nothing seems to stand out. We had the normal disagreements of any couple, nothing extraordinary, and I never imagined that everything would fall apart so quickly. Perhaps I was too focused on my own life and didn't see the signs of his distancing. Or maybe Adam was already looking for a way out and Natalie's manipulation was the perfect excuse. My family is divided in their opinions. Some think I should have given in to avoid conflict with Natalie. Others support my decision to have refused her absurd request. But at this point, none of that matters. The damage is done. Adam left and now I have to figure out how to rebuild my life while he continues his with someone else. I haven't had any contact with Natalie or Grace since everything happened. I have completely cut them out of my life and I feel relieved not to have to deal with their toxicity. I still find it hard to believe that Natalie was capable of manipulating Adam behind my back and destroying my marriage, but I have learned that there is no point in trying to change the past. What's done is done, and I have to move on. I'm going to be completely honest, I think Adam is dating Grace. It would make sense, considering that Natalie wanted my marriage to end so that they could be together. But I don't know for sure. Part of me needs to find out the truth. As for my feelings for Adam, I wish I could say that I'm over him, but I'm not. I still love him and probably always will. However, I know that our marriage is over. He has moved on and now it's my turn to do the same. It's just going to take time to process, and there are days when the pain seems unbearable. But I'm confident that I will get through it eventually. Update 2. First of all, I want to sincerely thank everyone for all the support, advice, and words of encouragement I received in my last post. I never expected so many people to care about my situation, and it has meant a lot to me. I want to address something that many of you mentioned, the possibility that Adam was dating Grace. I was starting to believe it too. Natalie's insistence that I leave Adam for Grace's sake made me think there was something going on between them. Why else would she make such a crazy request? I couldn't understand why my aunt would ask me to leave my husband as a birthday present for her daughter if there wasn't something going on between Adam and Grace. But the reality turned out to be much more disturbing than I imagined. About 2 weeks ago, I received a message from Stephen, Natalie's husband and Grace's father. We hadn't spoken in a long time, especially since everything got complicated, but he begged me to meet in person, saying he had important information to share with me. Given how chaotic the situation already was, at first I hesitated. I didn't want to get involved in any more family drama, especially after what had happened with Natalie and Grace. But something in the way Stephen asked me convinced me to listen to him. When we met, Stephen looked exhausted, as if he were carrying an enormous weight. I knew immediately that what he was about to tell me would be difficult to hear. He began by apologizing for Natalie, Grace, and everything that had happened. I had no idea where the conversation was going until he made a revelation that took my breath away. Adam wasn't dating Grace. He was dating Natalie. Yes, my manipulative and toxic 50-year-old aunt. I was completely paralyzed. My mind froze as I tried to process what I had just heard. For a moment I thought I had misunderstood, but Stephen continued to reveal the horrifying details. Apparently, Natalie and Adam had been having an affair for months. Stephen discovered them when he returned unexpectedly from a business trip. He found them in his own house, in his bedroom, in his bed. My husband and my aunt, together. Stephen explained to me that he didn't know exactly how long the affair had been going on, but from the messages and texts he found, it had been going on for months, if not longer. Natalie had been seeing Adam behind my back while pressuring me to leave him for Grace. The whole birthday gift thing was a smokescreen, a way of manipulating me and everyone else while she continued her affair with my husband in secret. I felt as if the world had collapsed around me. I thought I was prepared for anything, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I found it hard to process what Stephen was telling me. Natalie, an older woman? I always knew she was manipulative, but this was beyond the pale. And Adam, the man I thought I knew, the man I had built a life with, had he been secretly meeting my aunt all this time? But the story didn't end there. Stephen revealed that Natalie had decided to leave him. Apparently, she and Adam were planning to blow everything up during Grace's birthday. Yes, you read that right. Natalie planned to destroy her own family on her daughter's birthday to run away with my husband. Grace knew nothing about this, which added another layer of manipulation. Natalie had used her own daughter as a pawn in this twisted game, making everyone believe that Grace had feelings for Adam when in fact, she was the one having a relationship with him. As Stephen told me all this, I remained stunned. I didn't know how to react. I had been obsessed with the idea that Adam was going out with Grace, when in reality, Natalie, my own aunt, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Stephen showed me his phone with some of the messages he found between Natalie and Adam. I couldn't read them for long because it was too painful the way they talked about me, their plans, how they were going to start over once everything calmed down. It made me feel sick. I still find it hard to believe. I spent weeks trying to accept the possibility that Adam had feelings for Grace, but this is beyond my comprehension. Natalie had planned everything from the beginning. She even manipulated her own husband while having an affair with my husband behind everyone's back. I'm trying to decide what to do now, but I'm still in shock. I thought I was dealing with a husband who left me for another woman, but now I'm processing the fact that he left me for my aunt. Someone I considered family. I don't know if they still see each other or if their plans were ruined after Stephen found out. At this point, part of me doesn't even care about that. What's done is done. No matter what happens to them, the damage is already done to me. I wish I could say there was something positive in all this, but for now I'm just trying to survive this situation. I will keep you posted if anything changes, but for now I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward after everything that has happened. Thanks again for all the support. It has been instrumental during this nightmare. Update 3. It's been a while since my last post and several things have happened. I hope this is the last update of this nightmare I've been living through. I finally confronted Adam, and although the result was not what I expected, it helped me to close this chapter. I always knew that I would have to confront him directly at some point. I just didn't think it would be so intense or that he would end up begging me to take him back after realizing that Natalie was not who he thought she was. It's hard to describe how I felt before that moment, but I knew I couldn't move on with my life without talking to Adam face to face. I needed to tell him what I thought and hear the whole truth from him. No more secrets or doubts. I got in touch with him and told him we needed to talk. We met in a park, a neutral place where I thought I could stay calm. I didn't want this conversation to happen in our house, a place full of good and bad memories. When I saw him after so long, it felt strange. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days, but I didn't care enough to ask him what was wrong. I got straight to the point. I told him that I knew everything. I told him that I knew about Natalie and that she was the woman he had been seeing while I was at home, trusting him and loving him. The expression on his face was not the typical one of someone who has been found out. It was more like shame. He couldn't look me in the eye. He didn't try to defend himself, which surprised me because I was expecting excuses. Instead, he simply nodded and admitted it. It was anticlimactic. There was no shouting or drama, just a sad admission that he had ruined our marriage with an affair. I had so much I wanted to say to him. I had practiced this moment for hours in my mind, but when the moment came, I could only ask, why? I needed to know what was wrong with us or with me that he would betray me like that. Adam started talking about how he was no longer happy and how our marriage had become routine. He said he felt stuck and that Natalie made him feel alive again. It was like a punch in the stomach. I couldn't believe he would use that as an excuse, as if his boredom justified destroying our lives. I stood there, disgusted. I told him straight that his selfishness had cost him everything. There were many better ways to deal with feeling stuck. He could have sought therapy, taken a break, talked to me, but he chose to deceive me, to lie to me, and to destroy our marriage. So I told him I was going to file for divorce. I said it firmly and without hesitation, and I felt a strange sense of power. For the first time, I was in control. I wasn't begging him to stay or forgiving his terrible decisions. It was over. That's when the unexpected happened. Adam, who had been so indifferent about the affair until then, completely broke down. I had never seen him like that. He started to cry for real. I'm not talking about a few tears, but real sobs. He took my hands and begged me not to go ahead with the divorce. He said that everything with Natalie had fallen apart and that she was not at all who he thought she was. He now realized that he had made the worst mistake of his life. He told me that once the thrill of the affair was over, Natalie's true personality came to light. Apparently, she is manipulative and controlling, always looking for fights and even threatening to expose their affair if he didn't do things her way. He said she had made his life hell and that he regretted everything. It was strange to see this man, who had always seemed so strong, break down in front of me. He told me he felt lost without me and couldn't believe he had thrown away our life together for someone like Natalie. He assured me he still loved me and would do anything to make things right. But I felt nothing. No pity for him, no desire to take him back, not even compassion for what Natalie had done to him. I felt completely empty. Trust had been broken forever. He had destroyed it and no amount of tears or apologies would bring it back. I told him it was too late. I told him there was no way to undo what he had done and that I was not interested in trying to repair the damage to our marriage. I think it was then that he realized I was serious. I was not going to forgive him, and there was no chance of us getting back together. He continued to plead, he continued to try to convince me that we could get through this, that he was willing to do whatever it took, but I had already made up my mind. I told him that he deserved better and that I was going to move on with my life. I expected him to get angry, to become defensive, or to explode as he had done in the past when we fought, but it didn't happen. Instead, he just sank deeper into his misery, realizing that he had lost me forever. I left after that. I walked away and didn't look back. I've already filed for divorce and I feel like a weight has been lifted. It hasn't been easy. There are still moments when I feel so hurt and betrayed that it's hard to breathe, but I know I made the right decision. I know this is what I need to heal and start a new life. From what I've heard, Natalie is furious with Adam for trying to get back with me. Apparently, things between them turned ugly shortly after the truth came out, and now they're both miserable. Adam is paying the price for his decisions, and although I would never wish such pain on anyone, it's no longer my problem. I don't care what happens between them. I'm just glad I'm out of it all. I have cut Natalie out of my life forever. There is no possible forgiveness, no possibility of reconciliation. I have no room in my life for people who betray me like that. It's over, and now I'm concentrating on myself. This has been the most difficult experience of my life, but I have learned a lot about my own strength. I have realized that I don't need someone who disrespects me, lies to me, and cheats on me. I deserve a partner who values me, and I will never settle for less than that again. So that's it. I'm rebuilding my life step by step. It will take time to heal, but I know I'm on the right path. Thank you to everyone who has given me advice and support during this process. It has meant more than you could imagine. I'm finally ready to close this chapter and move on with my life.